So it's a question answering day. Hopefully the wind doesn't get too loud. Got Jake right here. Had a couple questions and I figured the best way to answer them is in video form. So, first question I had was about the 35 and why it is still parked. Well, I will show you. That old frickin' particle collector there, the line that runs in there, it was leaking, so I put a like a flex line or a plastic line on there, but it's still leaking from that line, so I gotta run another line. I'll put it back to metal and hopefully that seals it. But these things always frickin' leak, these particle collectors. I frickin' hate them. But that's what it is, and I think it was leaking on the starter and it's not getting a good connection, like right at the starter. So that's what I'm gonna clean up, and if hopefully I can get the leak away and it should start and have a good connection. Now on to the big question at hand. I said I'd make a video on this one, and it's why I don't have a skid steer. So let's talk shop. I am gonna take you guys on my planning and my logic so that you guys can kind of see where I'm going. And then this way, you kind of see why I haven't invested in one. I will tell you this, I would invest in a cheap one, like what maybe a little bigger than what Jake Ziegler is doing. About that size, an older one, either a New Holland or a Gale or a John Deere, whatever, I found at a decent price. The problem is, for me, is a skid steer doesn't get used enough, not enough hours to really justify the cost. And the other thing is skid steers are easy to rent in my area because there's so many construction companies. So it isn't hard to get a skid steer. It isn't hard for me to rent a skid steer. It works between $140 and $160 a day. And I think it's under $5 for the, I think it's under $5 for the week. So it's not super expensive for me to rent it for how much I use it. And it's not something where at one time of the year I can't have access to it because everyone's got them all rented out. That just isn't the case. So here we go. So imagine here, this area, this is right beside my barn. Barn's right here. Actually, I'll back up to show you guys better. So long term, imagine this way, a hay structure. Something either a pole barn or a fabric barn that's long, that would store my hay, that would run this way. So this is east-west, for anybody wondering. And that would more or less be the plan here. My issue being a skid steer, as much as they're convenient, one of the restrictions they have is they cannot lift that high, not high enough to justify it. The big thing for skid steers is they're used for more or less digging and small reach stuff, but more for digging and evening out surfaces. But I just don't have enough use for it to justify a $26,000 piece of equipment. I don't use it enough hours to make it make sense, and I don't have enough dollars to let it sit and just collect value and hold it and retain it. So it just doesn't make sense. So one of the jobs it would need to be able to do is lift bales high, and I'm planning to have it so that I can have a hay structure, imagine here, that would be a minimum of stacking 4 high, and a skid steer just won't do that. So that's one of my big things. That was one of the big things I would want it to do. It would be nice to pick it up off the fields, but as I said, that's not that big a deal. Anything can really do that, so it isn't enough to justify it. Second project where a skid steer would make sense would be feeding. Another place right here, if you're seeing, actually I'll get it from another angle here. So this is behind the barn. So here, right here, this is the side of the barn. This would be my north side of the barn. The plan is where this fence line is in this area will be my final loading area. And trucks will come in through here and trailers and load here. I was thinking have another section or set of gates here, and then, or like imagine a square behind here. So a square, and then a channel running, and then another square. And what it would be is it would be my way to sort. And then I'd have the chute running on the other side of this barn, and I could run it to over there, or I could run it to here, have it so that it's easily, I can move it in and out. Now, one of the things that would be convenient is I could use the skid steer for feeding with it. It does maneuver a lot better than a normal tractor. So that's one thing that is convenient, is you can feed a lot easier. That would be the one thing where I think it would be justifiable. But to have a new one, or even a nicely used one, it's going to cost me $25,000. So imagine this will be the area where I feed steers and my first year heifers, right where that old trailer is. That'll be that area. So imagine a box. This will be where I feed, and then this will be a loading area, and then this will be just another area maybe for the bull. But it just, for me, I can just put a feeder in there for each one, and it's hard. It's hard to justify $25,000 for the operation size I am. The difference being, one question you guys might wonder is, what about your hay equipment? You spent a lot of money on that, and it only gets used 3-4 times a year. The hard part is hay equipment is very expensive to rent. If you start punching numbers for that baler and for that mower and for that rake, it adds up very quickly, a lot faster than a skid steer does. So for me, imagine a skid steer. If I spend $2,000, let's say $2,000 a year, which is a abnormal year for me. The only thing I would really use it for is removing trees, probably removing tree roots. That would be the big one for me. So that would be the biggest job, but that's only a couple days max. There's kind of a design or a plan on where I'm gonna spend my money next, because the farm needs so much, because it hasn't been, it was never really designed for a beef operation. It was never really planned for a beef operation. So it just had a lot of neglect. So it's gonna take some money to get it back. So the idea of putting a skid steer in mind, I can't pull behind it. The thing I probably need before a skid steer for the hay operation is a tractor. So you're not switching on and off all the time. And so you can make it so that you're not going all the way to the home farm every time you need to switch jobs. So a tractor would make more sense. A smaller 65 tractor with a loader would be more ideal for me in the plan of my hay operation, to get my hay operation. Ideally, it would be so that you have one tractor per implement is ideal. But let's say 2, right? 2, so I don't have to switch everything on and off all the time. That is ideal for the hay. For the beef, next thing on the beef operation is finding a way to A, dehorn, and B, and B, band in the early parts of their life so that I can steer them out. Right now I currently don't have that, and that is a difficult thing because I get docked at the yards because it still isn't castrated. So that is my next stage for the beef operation, so finding a way to do that. I'm looking at a calf catcher with an ATV. An ATV will probably be the next plan because it has so many alternative uses. So I like a piece of equipment that does at least 2 to probably closer to 3 jobs so that it makes sense. So an ATV makes sense in that way. I can move wood with it. I can just put chains. So I was going to say that I can put chains on the ATV and it'll be pretty good in the winter. Obviously not perfect like anything, like it's not going to be like a snowmobile, but you can do the basic functions. So an ATV makes a lot more sense for our operation moving forward. That's what I'm looking at. But I just, yeah, so that's kind of what my thinking is and my logic is on this stuff. I know that I have different things I want to spend money on slowly but surely to build the operation up. It is going to take time, but I thought I'd answer this question. So my phone died and cut off, so that's why you guys get to look at the bales, because it just died. It runs out of video space. But thanks again for watching, guys. Feel free to comment, rate, and subscribe. Tell your friends. Keep having fun. Keep farming.